What no one tells you about being a man in the middle of a struggle phase is this: you will feel invisible. You will feel as though no one sees the silent battles you fight, the sleepless nights, the private fears you bury inside. You'll carry the weight of responsibilities, dreams and failures, all while the world expects you to keep moving without pause. And here's the part that most men never admit. Deep down, there is shame. Shame for not being there yet. Shame for falling behind. Shame for wanting to cry but not daring to. But if you think this makes you weak, the Stoics would disagree. Marcus Aurelius himself, the emperor of Rome, admitted in his private writings that he felt crushed under the burden of life. Yet instead of hiding, he wrote to himself as a way to endure, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." That sentence holds the key to how a man really feels in his darkest phase, powerless on the surface, but still holding an untapped strength within. Now think about this. When you're grinding alone, when nobody claps for you, when your efforts feel unnoticed, what emotion do you think dominates? For most men, it is loneliness disguised as anger. But here's the open secret. The Stoics taught that the true battlefield isn't the world outside, but the dialogue happening inside your head. Epictetus, once a slave with nothing to his name, taught his students that the greatest prison is self-pity, because it blinds you to the fact that you still have choices. He said, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." So, when a man goes inside his struggle phase, his hidden emotions are not signs of defeat, they are training grounds. The frustration you feel, it's resistance, like weights in the gym, designed to build unseen strength. The loneliness, it's silence giving you the chance to hear your own voice clearly for the first time. The fear, it's a mirror asking you whether your values are strong enough to carry you forward. Here's where most people get it wrong. They look at the struggle phase as something to escape from, but the Stoics expose it for what it really is: the forge. Seneca compared adversity to the way fire tests gold. He wrote, "Fire tests gold, adversity tests men." What you're going through right now isn't punishment, it's refinement. And yet, when you're inside that process, it feels like you're drowning. That's the paradox. The very phase you want to run away from is the one that's building you into the man you were meant to become. But if you leave too early, if you numb yourself with distractions, if you quit on yourself before the phase is complete, you walk away unfinished, half-forged. The Stoics believe that the man who emerges from struggle with composure gains something unshakable, an inner freedom no one can ever take away. So how does a man really feel inside his struggle phase? Torn, heavy, isolated, but also, though he may not realize it yet, dangerously close to greatness. Marcus Aurelius was surrounded by war, plague, and betrayal, yet he never abandoned his duty. He knew emotions were real, but he also knew they were temporary. The key wasn't to suppress them, but to use them as reminders. When he felt fear, it reminded him of courage. When he felt anger, it reminded him of patience. When he felt grief, it reminded him of love. And that's the lesson the Stoics leave us. Emotions in the struggle phase are not enemies. They are messengers. They tell you what virtues you must sharpen. They tell you what kind of man you're becoming. But here's the most important part, and I want you to hold on to this, because we'll return to it later. Every hidden emotion in your struggle is trying to teach you something. The pain you feel when you're unseen, it's teaching you self-reliance. The anger at being underestimated, it's teaching you self-mastery. The fear of failure, it's teaching you courage. None of these lessons can be learned from books, comfort, or success. They can only be learned here, in the silence of your struggle. And if you stay with me until the end, I'll reveal the one Stoic practice that transforms every hidden emotion, from fear, doubt, and shame, into a weapon of clarity and strength. That practice alone can change not just how you endure your struggle, but how you emerge from it unbreakable. If you've ever been inside a real struggle phase, you know there's a hidden layer no one talks about. The quiet envy you feel when you look around and see others moving faster than you. Friends buying cars, peers showing off careers, strangers flaunting relationships on social media. It eats at you. You tell yourself you shouldn't care, but deep down, it hurts. You start to believe you're falling behind in the race of life. But here's the Stoic truth. Marcus Aurelius whispered to himself every morning. It is not events that disturb people. It is their judgments about them. Think about that. The success of others doesn't wound you. The story you tell yourself about what their success means does. If you can rewrite that story, envy becomes fuel, not poison. This is what men feel in silence. They don't resent others for winning. They resent themselves for not yet unlocking their own strength. And that quiet resentment, if left unexamined, hardens into bitterness. But if examined through Stoic eyes, it becomes a call to action, a reason to sharpen discipline, patience, and focus. Seneca warned his student about comparison. He said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." When you're struggling, every comparison feels like salt in a wound, but the Stoics would flip the question. Instead of asking, "Why don't I have what he has?" ask, "Why do I believe I need it right now?" This is where hidden emotions reveal themselves, because under envy is fear. Fear that you're not good enough. Fear that you'll never catch up. Fear that you'll remain invisible forever. And here's the irony. Those very fears are the training ground for courage. The Stoics didn't deny fear. They transformed it into proof of life. If you feel fear, it means you're moving. It means you're in the arena. It means you're alive. Epictetus told his students, "Difficulties are things that show what men are." So next time you feel that knot in your chest when someone else wins, remember, it's not a sign you're losing. It's a reminder that your fight isn't over. But hidden emotions don't stop at envy. There's also doubt, the voice that whispers late at night, "What if none of this works? What if I'm wasting my time? What if I fail completely?" And here's the brutal truth most men don't admit. Doubt feels heavier than failure itself, because at least when you fail, you know where you stand. Doubt keeps you paralyzed, floating in uncertainty. Marcus Aurelius faced this exact storm during the Antonine Plague, when people died by the thousands every day. His empire was collapsing, enemies pressed at the borders, and even his closest advisors turned on him. Imagine the doubt. Am I enough? Can I carry Rome through this? But instead of drowning in it, Marcus turned to reason. He wrote, "If it is endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining. If it is unendurable, then stop complaining. Your destruction will mean its end as well." In other words, doubt loses its power when you realize there are only two outcomes. Either you endure and grow, or it destroys you and ends with you. Either way, doubt has no lasting power. And here's where I want you to lean in, because this is where the Stoics expose the real secret about emotions in the struggle phase. They believed emotions are not enemies to kill, but messengers to understand. Anger tells you where you lack patience. Fear tells you where you lack preparation. Envy tells you where you lack gratitude. Grief tells you where you love deeply. Every emotion you feel right now is a signal pointing to the next virtue you need to sharpen. And when men ignore this, when they bury these feelings without examination, they rob themselves of the very training that forges strength. So the next time doubt, envy, or anger hits you, don't ask, "How do I get rid of this?" Instead ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" But we're still not at the heart of it, because there's another emotion, one most men won't dare to speak aloud, that reveals itself in silence. Despair. That cold emptiness when the grind stretches too long, when nothing seems to change, when the question creeps in, what's the point? This is the most dangerous emotion of all, and the Stoics knew it. That's why Seneca warned, sometimes even to live is an act of courage. He understood that despair tempts you to quit, not because you're weak, but because you're blind to progress. What you don't see is that every day you survive the storm, every morning you rise again, you're proving to yourself that you're far stronger than the man you were yesterday. Despair lies. It tells you nothing's changing, when in truth, resilience is being carved into you quietly, invisibly, day by day. Now stay with me, because in the next part, I'll reveal a story about a man who lived through betrayal and exile, Seneca himself, and how his hidden emotions became the foundation of one of the most powerful Stoic lessons on resilience. And once you understand his transformation, you'll never look at your own strew. Exile phase the same way again. Let me take you to the year 41 AD. Seneca, one of the most brilliant minds of Rome, is suddenly accused of a crime he did not commit. Without trial, without justice, he is banished by Emperor Claudius to the island of Corsica, a remote, harsh place, far from the prestige of Rome. Imagine this. One day, you're in the heart of power, your words shaping senators and scholars, and the next, you're stripped of your status, separated from family, and left in silence. How would a man really feel in that moment? Anger, no doubt. Bitterness, surely. Perhaps even despair. For years, Seneca walked the rugged shores of Corsica, his dreams seemingly crushed. And yet, in that silence, something incredible happened. He began to write letters, not of rage, not of revenge, but of reflection. In those letters, he taught himself, and later the world, that no exile can steal a man's true possession, his mind. He wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Out of betrayal and despair came one of the most powerful lessons in Stoicism. The struggle phase doesn't take away your life. It forces you to see how much of it you've wasted. Now pause and think about that in your own life. Isn't that exactly how the struggle phase feels? Like you've been exiled, cut off from progress while others thrive without you? You feel betrayed, by circumstances, by luck, maybe even by people you trusted. That emotion cuts deep, and most men never speak it out loud. But Seneca's exile reveals something vital. Betrayal and struggle are not the end of your story. They're the start of clarity. What you call a dead end may actually be the turning point that forces you to ask, what am I doing with my days? What truly matters? Where am I wasting time? The hidden emotion here is not just anger, it's grief for wasted potential. But grief can either ruin you or sharpen you. The Stoics remind us, the choice is yours. Seneca's exile also exposes another layer of hidden emotions men face: loneliness. On Corsica, he had no audience, no students, no recognition. In our modern struggle phases, we feel the same when we grind in silence, with no applause, no validation, and no one telling us we're on the right path. That silence hurts, but the Stoics flip the script. Silence is not emptiness, it's opportunity. It's in silence that you begin to hear your own voice, undistorted by noise, judgment, or comparison. Epictetus reminded his students, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. And loneliness, as painful as it feels, is actually the gateway to freedom, because it forces you to detach from needing constant validation. If you can master yourself in loneliness, you'll never be controlled by the crowd again. But let's not sugarcoat it. Struggle phases carry another hidden weight: resentment. Men often feel resentful that life hasn't rewarded their efforts yet, that the world feels indifferent to their hard work. Seneca felt it too. But here's the turning point. He realized resentment only chained him deeper to his exile. Instead of asking, "Why me?" he asked, What now? And in doing so, he shifted from victim to master. That's the power of Stoicism. It doesn't deny your suffering, but it transforms how you interpret it. If resentment says, "Life has cheated me," Stoicism replies, "Life has challenged me." That single shift in perspective turns bitterness into discipline and exile into education. And yet there's one more hidden emotion lurking here, one that can destroy men silently during their struggle phase: hopelessness. When progress feels invisible, when every effort seems wasted, hopelessness whispers that nothing matters. Seneca battled this too, but instead of surrendering, he turned it into urgency. He wrote, "It is not that we have a short life, but that we make it short by wasting it." In other words, hopelessness is not proof that nothing matters. It's proof you've been placing meaning in the wrong things. Once you redirect meaning inward, towards self-mastery, discipline, and virtue, the struggle phase becomes not a prison, but a training ground. Now here's where I want you to lean in, because we've seen Marcus Aurelius bear the weight of an empire, and Seneca transform exile into wisdom. But what about a man who was born in chains? A man who tasted slavery itself, yet rose to become one of the greatest philosophers in history. In the next section, we'll uncover Epictetus's hidden emotions, his pain, his humiliation, and how he turned them into unshakable freedom. And once you understand his method, you'll never again see your own struggle phase as weakness. It will become the very source of your strength. Picture this. You are born into slavery. Your body is not your own. Your choices are not your own. Even your dignity is not your own. This was the reality of Epictetus, who lived under the control of a cruel master. Historical accounts say his leg was deliberately broken by that master, leaving him crippled for life. Imagine the emotions that must have flooded him in that moment: rage, humiliation, despair. How does a man really feel when he is stripped of control, when even his body is taken from him? Most men would collapse under the weight of that injustice, but Epictetus didn't. He turned his wound into wisdom. He would later tell his students, "You may fetter my leg, but my will, not even Zeus himself can overpower." That one line exposes the Stoic truth about the struggle phase. The world can chain your body, strip your resources, betray your trust, but no one can take the fortress of your mind unless you surrender it. Now let's translate that into the hidden emotions of modern men. When you're in your struggle phase, you often feel trapped. Maybe it's financial chains, debts holding you down. Maybe it's emotional chains, a broken relationship, betrayal, or family expectations. Maybe it's mental chains, self-doubt, depression, or guilt from past mistakes. In those moments, men feel powerless, just as Epictetus must have felt. But his story reveals the critical Stoic lesson. Even when everything external is taken, your response is still yours. You may not control circumstances, but you control meaning. You may not control events, but you control interpretation. And in interpretation lies freedom. That is why Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Hidden inside your struggle, buried beneath anger and despair, is the one thing no chain can touch: your choice to rise. But let's be brutally honest. When men feel powerless, another emotion creeps in: humiliation. Epictetus must have felt the sting of being treated as less than human, just as modern men feel humiliated when they fail publicly, when they're dismissed, underestimated, or laughed at. Humiliation burns like fire, and most men carry it silently. Yet Stoicism doesn't tell you to suppress that fire. It tells you to redirect it. Humiliation, when reframed, is proof that you care too much about the opinions of others. And if humiliation hurts, that's the invitation to detach. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. In other words, humiliation only has power when you agree with it. Break that agreement, and the fire becomes fuel for resilience. Epictetus also reveals another hidden emotion of the struggle phase: resentment toward fate. Think about it. How many times have you asked yourself, why me? Why this? Why now? Epictetus could have asked the same. Why was he born a slave? Why was his leg broken? Why was freedom denied to him? And yet, instead of resenting fate, he embraced it. The Stoics called this amor fati, the love of fate. To love not only the good moments, but even the cruel ones, as necessary ingredients of your destiny. Epictetus taught that resenting fate is like resenting the rules of a game you're already playing. It changes nothing but poisons everything. Instead, he turned his chains into a classroom, teaching others that life doesn't owe us comfort, but it always offers us a chance to practice virtue. And that's where your own power lies. Not in controlling what happens, but in mastering how you play the hand you're dealt. But here's where it gets deeper. Epictetus's slavery teaches us about the final hidden emotion in the struggle phase: despair disguised as numbness. Because when pain lingers too long, men often stop feeling altogether. They go cold, detached, hopeless, not from strength, but from surrender. Epictetus refused this numbness. He believed every hardship was a test, every wound a teacher. He said, "Difficulties show men what they really are." That line should echo in your mind, because it means that the very struggles you wish you could erase are revealing the strongest version of you. Without them, you'd never meet the man you're capable of becoming. And yet, we're not finished. Because even with Marcus Aurelius's discipline, Seneca's wisdom, and Epictetus's resilience, there remains one more hidden emotion that Stoicism addresses: the fear of death itself. The ultimate struggle, the final test. And in the last part of this video, we're going to confront that fear head-on, just as the Stoics did, and discover how mastering it can make you fearless in every other part of life. Stay with me, because once you understand their final lesson, every struggle phase you face will look different forever. There is one hidden emotion that overshadows all the others, though most men never dare to name it: the fear of death. In the struggle phase, this fear often doesn't appear as the literal terror of dying. It disguises itself as procrastination, hesitation, and anxiety. Think about it. Why do we delay our dreams? Why do we hesitate to act? Why do we worry endlessly about outcomes? Because deep down, we treat time as if it were infinite. We live as though tomorrow is guaranteed. But the Stoics ripped the mask off this illusion. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every morning, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." This wasn't a morbid obsession. No, it was liberation. If you accept that death is inevitable, suddenly you stop wasting time. Suddenly, fear loses its grip. Suddenly, every moment in your struggle phase becomes an opportunity, not a punishment. And here's the paradox. Men in their struggle phase often feel like they're dying inside, dying from stress, from failure, from loneliness. But the Stoics would say, "Good. Let that part of you die. Let the weak, undisciplined, distracted version of you perish in this phase, so that a stronger version can be born." Epictetus believed every hardship was a rehearsal for death, teaching us to let go of what we cannot control. Seneca wrote, "He who fears death will never do anything worthy of a man who is alive." Think about that. If you fear death, you live small, timid, hesitant. But if you accept it, you live wide, bold, and free. Death isn't the enemy. Wasting life is. And in your struggle phase, this is the hidden truth. What feels like death is actually rebirth. The old you is being burned away, so the resilient you can rise. But let's go even deeper. The fear of death is really the fear of meaninglessness. Men worry. What if I work this hard and it doesn't matter? What if I give my all and it's forgotten? What if everything ends with nothing? This quiet dread haunts many during their darkest nights. But here the Stoics offer the most empowering response. Meaning is not given, it is created. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." In other words, stop asking if your life matters. Make it matter through your actions, today, right now, even in struggle. Your struggle phase is not meaningless if you use it to forge discipline, courage, and character. And those virtues? They outlast money, fame, or applause. They carve your legacy into the hearts of those you touch, whether history remembers your name or not. So how does a man really feel when he goes inside his struggle phase? Let's strip away the masks. He feels shame, envy, doubt, resentment, despair, humiliation, and yes, even the shadow of death. But here's the Stoic revelation. None of these emotions are evidence of weakness. They are the very tools life uses to carve strength. Every hidden emotion is a messenger. Shame teaches self-respect. Envy teaches gratitude. Doubt teaches courage. Resentment teaches resilience. Despair teaches patience. Humiliation teaches detachment. And death itself teaches urgency. The struggle phase feels like it's breaking you, but in truth, it's shaping you into a man who cannot be broken. Now here's the practice I promised you from the very beginning. The one Stoic ritual Marcus Aurelius used daily that will transform your emotions into power. It's called the evening reflection. Every night before he slept, Marcus reviewed his day. He asked, "What did I do well? Where did I fall short? What emotions controlled me? Where could I choose better?" Tomorrow? This simple practice turns hidden emotions into visible lessons. Instead of being trapped by them, you use them. Instead of drowning in shame, you turn it into resolve. Instead of being crushed by fear, you turn it into courage. Do this nightly, and your struggle phase will stop feeling like chaos. It will become your training ground. So, my friend, if you're in the middle of your struggle phase right now, understand this. You are not lost. You are not weak. You are not behind. You're in the forge. And every hidden emotion you carry is not your enemy, but your teacher. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus all walked this path, each with burdens far heavier than ours. They didn't escape their struggles. They transformed them. And so can you. The question is, will you keep running from the pain, or will you walk straight into it and claim the freedom waiting on the other side?